Do I need the mic? My name is Ryan McGuire. I am the Director of Special Events and the Letter Winners Club here at Iowa State in the athletics department, and it's a pleasure for me to do a real special introduction for you tonight. The gentleman that you are about to hear from really doesn't need an introduction, but I will give you just a little bit of background on him so that you have a good idea of the man who's about to speak to you. I'll save that for you. He's going to talk a lot longer than I am.
And are you on? It doesn't sound like you're on.
That's good. Okay, thank you. The basketball resume is impressive. Back when he was a star for the Cyclones, led the Big Eight in scoring 2 years, averaging over 24 points a game. Joined Wilt Chamberlain as the first two to score 600 points in a season twice. Wilt Chamberlain's a pretty impressive name to be in that company with. Longtime NBA player with Cincinnati, Milwaukee, Seattle, Houston. In 1998, Zaid was inducted into the ISU Athletics Hall of Fame, a great honor on this campus. In 2003, an even greater honor, his jersey was retired in Hilton Coliseum. It still hangs and will hang forever in the rafters of Hilton Coliseum. You know, that's the basketball resume, and I know Zaid is proud of that, but that really only is the beginning of the story. Those things are important, but they really don't show the measure of the man that you're about to hear from. That measure is based on his family, his faith, and the way the man treats people. That's what's been impressive to me. I just met him today, and we met the basketball team over in Hilton Coliseum. And then as we were walking out, a few short conversations with ushers and other people that were walking in. And the one thing I noticed was that everybody that walked away from those conversations had a smile on their face. They were touched by just a brief encounter with Zaid. And that's truly the mark of a man, is the way they treat people and the mark they leave with other people that they come in contact with. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce to you Zaid Abdulaziz.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be back to Iowa State, to Ames. It seems like it was only yesterday that I was running up and down a basketball court playing a child's game called basketball. But that child's game has given me something in my life that most people never get. If it wasn't for basketball, obviously I wouldn't be up here talking to you right now, and I wouldn't have gotten out of the tough streets of Brooklyn, New York. So I owe that to God and all the wonderful people that have come in contact in my life. I've been very fortunate. I've been able to travel all over the United States. Collegiately, when I played for the Cyclones, I would go to Nebraska, go to Des Moines, play Drake, go to Oklahoma, Norman, Kansas, Lawrence. That was the beginning of it. And what I started noticing that people are just people no matter where you might go. They just want to take care of their families, they want to earn enough money to be happy, and they want the education for the kids and so on and so forth. And that's what I've learned. That's domestically. Then I had the pleasure of traveling over to different countries like Germany and Copenhagen and Sweden and Tunisia, Istanbul, Turkey, and Mexico, and places like this. And I've noticed the same thing internationally, that people just want to take care of their families, and they want to eat, and they want to be happy. And that's most people in the world. They want to be happy. So I've been very fortunate to travel to those places. I was introduced as a person that, that brings smiles and happiness to people that I meet. That didn't just happen naturally. That happened to me naturally. It was something that's God's given me. Ever since I was a little kid, I was given that. People seemed to like me. I don't know why. It was something I was just given. It was like a talent that people get. Like, I'm not too crazy about math, but some people have a ability to do mathematical problems and things like that, engineering. I was given the social aspect of it. when I meet people, I like people, and I like all types of people. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what color you are. I like people, and I've had, like I said, I've had the privilege of meeting some very fantastic people in my life here on this earth at this time. So, when we look at what I've found in my life, what I found in my life is the fact that God is in control of everything in the universe, and I don't care who you are, whether you're a Christian, Jew, Muslim, Hindu. Everybody was created by the Creator of the heavens and the earth, and that's where the first allegiance should go, to the Almighty, because we were created by the Almighty, regardless of what the religion you might be. Looking back, I can honestly say that growing up in the tough streets of Brooklyn, New York, every aspect of my life was kind of recorded, and I was protected every step along the way. Every step along the way. I remember I lived in a very tough area, and I remember coming home one night, and I lived over a soul food restaurant, and across the street was a tavern. And I was coming home one day, and the guys had some heroin, and they had the syringe, and they said, "Hey, you want some of this?" I had to make a quick decision right away. So what I did, I said, "Oh, my tummy hurts, guys. I'll be right back. My tummy." But the next week or the next day, I needed another excuse because my tummy wasn't going to work. So the next time I would say, "Okay, I used tummy this time. Now, next time I'm going to say, oh, my mother's calling me. I'll be right back, guys." But you can see how that was the hand of the Almighty just protecting me. I didn't succumb to that. Sometimes in our life, our life is ruined by a bad choice. I've had friends who were maybe a better basketball player than I was at the time. They made a bad choice. They decided to use some illegal substance. They decided to beat somebody up and hurt somebody. Or they decided to, rob somebody and do bad things. And, they ended up in prison. So sometimes our life is circumstances. And again, those circumstances, the positive circumstances in my life was because the Almighty was leading me in the right direction. Why? I can't say. I can't say why I was chosen and my other friends were not. Maybe it's because I have to be more compassionate, or I have to see, or my faith, I have to see, I have more faith, and that's the way it happened. That's the only way I could explain it. My family wasn't a good one. My mom and dad, they never spoke to each other one day in my life. There's my dad to the right, to the left, where you're sitting. He was a detective for the city of New York. He probably was one of the first black detectives in New York City. At that time, in that time, most of the police in New York were Irish. And everybody, in looking at my dad's career, he made about $4,669 a year as a detective. Not much money. So police were almost set up to fail. What would they do? They would take bribes. My dad worked for the Division of Weights and Measures. His job was to go into meat markets, look at the butchers, and keep an eye on the butchers, what they did. In those days, a butcher would get a 3-pound chicken, they would have a 1-pound weight. Stick it in there would be 4 pounds, and they would remove the 1-pound weight. So the poor housewife only got 3 pounds chicken when paying 4 pounds for the chicken. Other times what they used to do is take old meat, like hamburger meat, that was gray and molded, and they would put red dye in it to make it look fresh. So my dad's job was to go in, cite him for violation. That's what his job was. So when he got busted, he got arrested for fraud, for taking kickbacks. He bounced back. He became a photographer, and he was the one who came on Don Smith night in the state of Iowa. That was Don Smith night way back when. He came back and he did a lot of photographies, a lot of photos that are in my book right now of me on Don Smith Night when I was honored by the great people of Ames. That was March, I got it right here, March 4th, 1968. He took those pictures. He passed away in 2003, and at the time he had worked for Governor Nelson Rockefeller as his personal photographer, and also he was on Al Sharpton's presidential campaign when he passed away. That's my dad. One thing bothered me about my dad, and it was his obsequiousness. I used to think that he was an Uncle Tom because he used to smile and pretty much do, a tap dance. But keep in mind, that's what he had to do back in the 50s to survive, to support his family. So when it comes to politics, I don't like politics because I used to see the way my dad used to operate, and I don't like it. So because of what I had seen, political. So anything that has to do with politics, I run away. Matter of fact, last month I was invited to a black caucus, and I really didn't want to go because it said caucus. But a caucus, I guess, it just means gathering. It has really no political, it means gathering. But I thought it meant politics. I didn't want to go. So I did end up going, though, but then they explained it was a library meeting. They called it the Black Caucus of Librarians. My mother, she worked as an operator, telephone operator. But my mother was an alcoholic. And my mother and dad never spoke one day of my life. When I say never spoke, I mean not one word. Because of the pressure that was put on him by child support, he was forced to call me up maybe monthly and take me out somewhere to watch the Dodgers play and take me to a Knicks game. So when he called, if he got my mother, he would hang up. If he got my sister, he would say, hey, my name was Poochie. Say, hey, I want to take Poochie out. I want to take him to a Knicks game. But if he got my mother, he would hang up. So that's what I was watching all those years, that my mom and dad being away from each other. So that was a little bit about my childhood. The other thing that we have to appreciate outside of, just being, our creator, we have to, our country. I have this thing, when I go to other countries, I don't want to be an ugly American. So what I try to do, I try to conduct myself in a proper way. Because sometimes in other countries that I've seen, like, I don't want to mention the countries, but they really have a hard time with Americans because they tell me Americans are kind of arrogant. Americans are kind of selfish. Americans are this and that. So when I used to go to other countries, it was a way I conducted. I try to conduct myself in a good way. Even like tipping. Like you go to some European countries, if you give them a big tip, they don't like that because that's like arrogance. Like you eat like you go to Germany and there's like 25 francs for a meal or something, you leave 50 francs. They don't like that. So if you're tipping in Europeans, just give them a little bit. It's like, thank you very much, this is a token. It's not like overdoing it. So that's what I try to do. Outside of believing in my God, I try to represent my country because it's very important. Oh, I was picked for the U.S. Olympic team, 1968. Did I go? I did not. Why I didn't go? A lot of pressure was put on me from the black society in those days, in the 60s. We have movements going on. And I don't think I was strong enough to say, yeah, I wanted to go to represent my country, so I ended up not going. A thing I look back as, I kind of look back at that as a mistake. Where other people had gone, like Spencer Haywood, he was able to take the racial part of it away and see two things, basketball and here's this, and hey, this is basketball. It has nothing to do with anything else. So at the time, I was not able to do that because of all the peer pressure that was going on in this university at that time. Also, as human beings, all of us come from different races and tribes and nationalities, so we have to conduct ourselves in a proper manner. When I go back into some of the black communities, I hear the N-word being used. It makes me shiver. Young kids using it. The N-word, the N-word, the N-word, all the time. And it really makes me shiver I had one guy come up to me one day, and I got really angry. He called me a dog. Hey, dog, what's up? And I was about to say, you know something, kid or young man, I'm old enough to be your father. Don't call me a dog. But those are some of the things we have to deal with in a society. Sometimes the way the youth, they look at people who have gotten older. And what I try to do, I try to represent myself in a good manner at all times. When I go out, I'm a product of all those things I just mentioned, and also I'm a product of Iowa State University. I wouldn't want to do anything bad to be negative against Iowa State University, because that's my alumni. I'm an alumnus of that university. So I have to conduct myself in a good manner, because people, they're looking. Where did you graduate at? Iowa State University. Now, if I would act like I'm crazy or do something mean, then people would say, what kind of people what type of people come out of Iowa State University? My God, this guy can't even read. Can't even read. So it's very important the way we conduct ourselves. And also, athletically, my jersey is retired in this university. So that means the people that went before me, Waldo Wepner, the first All-American, Gary Thompson, myself, Jeff Hornacek, Jeff Grayer, Fred Hoiberg. What would happen if I let them down by doing something stupid, by doing something bad, and bringing disgrace to this university? Also, the National Basketball Association. I played 10 years in the league. What would happen if I brought disgrace to the NBA? I wouldn't want to do that. Oh, I've seen it. Like you, I've seen the brawl in Detroit that night. It was horrible. I watched it for 2 minutes. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in its entirety. My daughter called me and said, "Dad, you should see this fight that's on TV." I turned it on. I saw these guys running up into the stands, pounding people and people fighting. Jerry West didn't do that. I've never seen Jerry West run up into the stands. I've never seen Oscar Robertson run up into the stands. Karl Malone run up into the stands attacking people. I've never seen it in my life. And to be honest with each and every one of you, it was disgraceful. So those are some of the things that I always keep abreast of. I always keep in mind how I'm conducting myself. Religiously, as far as God is concerned, family, nationality, race, all these things are very important to me. Iowa State, NBA, all these things. How did I get here? How was I able to get to Iowa State University? Did I think I ever would become an NBA player? Never. Did I think I would become a two-time All-American? Never. Did I think I would become one of the greatest Big 8 players of all time? Never. I was just a kid who liked to play basketball. Played it every day on the streets of New York. But again, God gave me a gift. How did I get here? Well, I played at the Bedford YMCA. That's where Lenny Wilkins came from and Connie Hawkins and those great players. And one day my coach, who was a police officer who knew my dad, he knew that I had some exceptional ability, so he set me up to play against a guy that went to school here by the name of Hank Whitney. So what happened, I was supposed to meet Hank Whitney, I think it was on a Friday night, and I got there early. I was really, really nervous that I was going up against this Big 8 player. So we played, and after we played, I didn't have the confidence that I really, really played that well because I could never see my gift. I could never see my gift. So I looked down and I saw Gene, my coach, and they had smiles on their faces. So they came over to me. Hank Whitney put out his hand and said, "I've never met anybody who can jump higher than me." He said, "I'll call Iowa State to see if we can get you a scholarship to go to school there." About 3 weeks later, I got a letter from Iowa State to say, "We'd like you to come down." That's how I got into this great university. What would have happened if Hank Whitney was not a mentor to me? I wouldn't have been here. So that's why I have to be a mentor to other people. And I'll come back to that later, about mentoring. This is Hank Whitman. And that's one of the reasons I'm in this university. He took the time Friday night to come out and play against a kid who's a 16-year-old kid, play against me and call up the university and get me here. Oh, when I got here, boy, was I kind of confused. Got on the plane for the first time, I was scared to death. A plane taking off doing 500 miles an hour scared me to death. Landed in Chicago, landed in Des Moines, looked around, it was quite different than where I came from. Most of the people I knew was black. Looked around, nothing but white people. I said, oh God, what happened? What's going to happen to you? It would be very analogous to some of you going to Harlem as a natural consequence. You're out of your element. So how do you deal when you're out of your element? I think all of us should be out of our element sometimes to make it a better world. So I go to Beardshare Hall over here, and I'm in the office, and I meet a woman that treated me like her son. Her name was Dorothy Erskine. Here's a picture of Dorothy, and she's in my book. She's on the back page. There's Dorothy. And she worked in the registrar's office there. She used to tell me things like, Donald, take 2 hard courses and take 2 easy courses. If you do that, you'll graduate on time. I took Mrs. Erskine's advice. So what I did, I took 2 hard courses, 2 easy courses. 2 hard courses, 2 easy courses. Why did I do that? Because the athletes at that time, in the beginning, they took all easy courses. So by the time they became juniors and seniors, they had hard courses to take. So what happened, they would flunk out. So Mrs. Erskine would set up my schedule for me, and she said, do this, do that, do this, do that. She would check up on me, make sure I was going to class. If I didn't go to class, she'd say, Donald, we heard you weren't in class today. So I didn't want to let Mrs. Erskine down. So I pretty much graduated on time. English was tough for me because back in New York, the educational system is not like an Iowa system. It's quite different. I knew what a verb was. It's an action word. Run, jump, verbs. But I didn't know how to apply that into a structured text. So my first year of English, I flunked, which I talked about in my book. But I bounced back, and then I took English 101 over again. I took English 102, 103, then I took speech, then I took journalism, and I passed. I wasn't the greatest student because I was learning to learn. So I had to relearn everything again. So those skills, when I began writing my book, Darkness to Sunlight, those skills were still innately in me. The education I got from from Iowa State University was still in me. The structure, the way to set, how you write a theme and so on and so forth, it was still in me. So it was a matter of me just getting it out. And I worked very hard. I wrote every word of my book. Of course, I had a great editor, Miss Nelda Dance. I had a great graphic designer, a woman by the name of Mie Butterworth. Butterbrot. What I'm asked the most about is darkness to sunlight. What does it mean? And in my book, there's many darknesses to sunlight. As a 17-year-old kid coming to Iowa State, getting on that plane, coming from a black community, a white community, darkness to sunlight. When I was a kid, I made a bad choice. I went out with some bad guys. So I got arrested. I was facing 3 felonies. If I would have gotten convicted of those felonies, I'd just be getting out of prison right about now because those felonies were like 15 years apiece, 45 years. So I would just be getting out, with good behavior. Maybe I would have got out maybe 5 years ago, but I got out. Darkness to sunlight. My mom and dad, their darkness. I have 5 kids, 6 kids. Darkness to sunlight. and so on and so forth. So when I tell people about darkness to sunlight, it's up to the reader to look in the book and see what the darkness to sunlights might be. There's many of them. And sometimes sometimes one of the readers will tell me, hey, there's another one. I learned another one that I didn't see before. During those times when I got to Iowa State, a lot of things were going on. Our president got his head blown off, John Kennedy. And then Oswald got killed almost the next day. We were living in some very turbulent times. There were protests. There were dogs eating people, biting people. The Vietnam War. A lot of stuff was happening. So how was one to deal with all of that? We were in a roller coaster type scenario in this country. John Kennedy was murdered. Dr. King was murdered. Malcolm X was murdered. I was a young kid, 18 or 19 years old at the time, at this university playing collegiate basketball. And I, like anybody else, I was susceptible to the times that we were living in. Things were whispered to me that sometimes I believed. And at times I didn't know if those things were true or not. Almost like a paranoia. I might be walking through campus going, all these white people here, and I'm the only brother around here. Does that person like me? Or does that person like me? Why didn't that person smile at me like that? And that would be true of anybody going to any other place. But there was always Dorothy Erskine I could go over and have some food with. So she'd make me meals, meatloaf and liver and all sorts of great foods, and that kept me kind of balanced, where I didn't go off either way. Some people ask me about both of the careers, the NBA career and the collegiate career. Which did I like the best? And I always tell them it was my collegiate career. Sometimes I have to pinch myself that I got through my collegiate career, because when I played, I found out later, teams like Kansas and Oklahoma and Nebraska, they would set up special defenses to stop me. But it never worked. I averaged close to 25 points a game, close. 1 year, my average did come down my sophomore year because I had mononucleosis. I averaged just 19 points, a little under over 18 points a game. But the next two seasons, I averaged 24.8 and 24.2. I averaged about 24 points a game, and I averaged just about 13.5 rebounds my career. But it wasn't difficult for me. And I found out later, it really makes me nervous. I just found out in doing the research for my book that Kansas and Oklahoma, they used to set up special defenses to stop me. But it never worked. But I never lost any teeth with an elbow. I don't remember ever getting hit by anybody. But people, there was an article written about me by Frank Wright in the Ames Tribune, in the Ames Daily, saying that, I was being abused on the court by, other teams. I never felt anything. How can I explain that? I explain it in the chapter of my book called Prodigy. And that's what I was. I don't know too much about basketball. So you can maybe say I was like a girl, like a 4-year-old girl that plays the piano. If you told her to hit an E flat, she'll say, what are you talking about? What's an E flat? She just has natural ability. Or if you asked a chess champion, Bobby Fischer, who was a grandmaster at a young age, why did you move your bishop there? Why did you do that? He'll just say, I don't know, I just did it. It looked. That's where it should have gone. And that's what I was. I was a prodigy. I'm not too crazy about sports. My son will tell you that. Football, I'm not too crazy about it. Soccer, I know absolutely nothing about it. I do like martial arts. I've taken Kung Fu and Karate, and I like Tai Chi. I take Tai Chi. But as far as that's concerned, I'm not a sports person. And NBA players that I grew up, NBA players that I played with, they used to laugh at me about that. Zaid, you never go out, you don't go to parties, you don't hang out with women, you don't go out with women, you don't do this at the time. Because I was the type of guy, if I did go out with a woman, I would give her my divided attention. I wouldn't be fooling around with other people. That didn't make sense to me. And they used to tease me about that. My response was always to them, if you had to go out with Wilt Chamberlain, you wouldn't go out with anybody yourself. You got to go out with Wilt. And I knew my advantage was this. I went to the hotel room after the game. I didn't go out. Went to sleep, ate good, had a good meal, went to sleep. I said to myself, if Wilt is out having a party, he's going to have a problem because he's going to have to play me. Because at 6'9", here's Wilt. Here I am. So I needed any advantage I can get. And I did the same with, I used to think that way with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Bob Lanier and these big centers. I had problems with the smaller centers like McAdoo and Cowens. I had problems with Dave because we played the same type of game. Alvin Adams. So, outside, not back to the basket. I wasn't that type of center. I was this type of center, So, but I always thought that would be my advantage. If they slipped up, if Kareem was out having parties and whatever, and if McAdoo or any of them, they would have to see me because I'm going to get my sleep. I owe it to myself. I owe it to the people who are coming to see me play. I owe it to them. So, have to be professional. I'm only saying that I'm not one to brag, but I'm very proud of the fact that in the NBA, I was never late to a practice. I never missed a game. And with the Cyclones, as a Cyclone, I never missed a game. I never missed a practice. Looking back now, I want to pinch myself because that's kind of surreal. I don't know how it happened. It happened. Some of the greatest things that happened to me as a Cyclone, the greatest thing was my sophomore year. I think we were playing Ohio State. And when they introduced my name, it said, starting at center, number 35, Don Smith. The Armory, which had about 7,000 or 8,000 people, they got up and the people clapped, and they clapped, and they clapped. I was 18 years old, 19 years old. I was shy and I was scared. And they clapped, and they clapped. Then when I came out of the game, they clapped, and they clapped, and they clapped. I got that most of my career, when my name would be mentioned in this university, which is fantastic to me because, what can I say? And also having John Wooden say that I probably was the greatest player that he's ever seen on a collegiate level. That's John Wooden, the greatest player, the greatest coach that ever coached. Also, Seattle. I live in Seattle now. That's my home. I ended up there. It's a nice city. It rains a lot, but it's nice. I raised my family there. And if you like seafood, it's a good place to be, which I love. And a lot of fresh air, a lot of oxygen, a lot of trees. Mount Rainier, Olympic Mountains to the west. Very nice place. Vancouver, Canada, about 2.5 hours to the north. I love it there. I raised my family there, as I said. And that's where I began writing the book. Some people ask, well, why did you write the book? First thing I want to tell you, I had to write it. So that's the only way I can explain it. Because I don't know how I wrote it myself. I just remember on those cold Iowa blizzard days when I had to go to English 101, I'm in the bed in the dorms, Friley Hall, or where Halsey Hall? I can't remember. Anyway, I used to be in the bed going, I opened up the blinds and said, I'm not going out there today. Go back to bed, and something would prick at me and say, hey, you better go to class. So I would fight it and say, I don't want to go today. You know why I went? I had to write this book. But I didn't realize it at the time. I had to write the book, so I had to get some skills. I never knew it. I flunked my first English 101. I had a teacher by the name of Mr. Rogel. He flunked me. And it was hard. I'm coming from New York, and he has the theme book, and I have the infamous theme book in the book. All of you know this one. Just to see that will put shivers down your spine. So Mr. Rogel comes, he goes, okay, here's your theme today. Moby Dick, Oedipus Rex. I'm coming from Brooklyn. What do I know about that? I flunked in English 101. So I had to learn again how to do it. So I learned how to write a theme, how to, you put the outline down, and then the next year I went back and I passed it. I got a C, and I was happy to get a C because I'm coming from Brooklyn. Thinking I'm educated. I'm not educated because to me there was a different system here. Everybody knew what a theme was here since maybe grade school. I'd never seen that theme book. I've never seen that theme book before, so I had to relearn again. So those are some of the things, areas that my childhood, my adolescence, my Iowa State, and my MBA. And now, I did the book. Some people say I have a good memory because I was able to write a book. My God, when you have a very messed up childhood, you don't forget. But some people say, no, you have a good memory because I wouldn't have remembered that. Well, I had to remember that because I lived every second of it. Being in the MBA was something I never planned to do. It just happened. And I'm so grateful to my creator for giving me the ability to be able to write this book. It took me 3.5 years to write this book, and it was very difficult. The editing was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life because I would write like 2,000 words. The next day, the editor will come in and say, that's no good. And she would rip it up. I just spent like 3 hours writing something, or a day writing something, and she had to rip it up. She said, you have to rip it up. I had some things in my book that were very controversial. And she said, Zaid, I wouldn't put that in my book if I was you. I didn't understand what she meant, but putting controversial things in your book, it can take away the book itself because somebody would be in the back of the room challenging me and say, excuse me, that's very bad what you've done. I'm not afraid to put something controversial in my book, but I'm getting a little too old for that, One of the things that were kind of controversial, I didn't know it. It was this thing called secondhand smoke. I was going to put something about secondhand smoke, how it's a stupid idea. What I wanted to say was that when I was growing up, there was no such thing as legislation about the nearness of somebody. So, this guy's smoking, and like in Seattle, there's a law I have to be so many feet away from this guy. Or you get cited, they give you a ticket. So if you're smoking and within that person's perimeter, or the nearness of that person. I found that to be odd because back in the day, back in the 60s or when I was a kid, I even though I did smoke when I was young, but it just made sense to me if that person was smoking, I would naturally get away from him. So I wouldn't need a legislation to, so everything in a society is becoming legislated. You can't do anything without some type of rule. And I really don't like that. I like the simple things. There's a way to work it out among us as human beings. We don't have to legislate this and that. And I think it's really fragmenting our society by legislation. But she told me you have to keep that out of your book. So I did. Who knows? I might put it in the next edition. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, that's been my life, my childhood, and I can go into more and more and more and more. So what I'm going to do now is I spoke for about 40 minutes. I'm just going to take some questions. I'll answer questions, and I hope I can answer them. Anybody?
What was your greatest experience in the NBA?
Okay, my greatest experience as a player, right? I would say when I got 27 rebounds in a game. That was more than I had gotten as a collegiate athlete. I got 24 as a Cyclone. I don't think that's the record anymore, though. But I got 24 as a Cyclone, but I got 27 in the NBA, 27 rebounds in a game. I think it was 19 defensive rebounds and 8 offensive rebounds in a game. I think it was against the Phoenix Suns. That was probably because I like the rebound, you know. Yeah. Yes.
I watch the games of the NBA now, and I'm constantly saying, they're palming the ball. You know, I mean, basketball's changed. And it's more of it looks more like a pickup game used to look like back, 10, 15 years ago. Do you think that, there's been a big change in the way the game is played?
Yeah, there's a big change. I think the athlete today is much more skilled than we were, but they couldn't beat us because we played teamwork. Keep in mind that if you look at an NBA game today, I would say this game is like 87-81. That's probably an average. That's with the 3-point shot. That's not very many. 87-81, right? You know why that is? Because one guy gets the ball and he's dribbling all over the place. Everybody, and the other 4 players are just watching him. He's going like this and going like that. Back in my day, an average game was like 125 to 119, and we played defense. So what that means is that 125 to 119, passing the ball, movement. So that's how we would beat the player today. We would pick them apart because the player today, they don't want to play defense, where we played defense back in my era. And that's right. And I see a lot of palming. It's a lot of palming, and I don't understand how a lot of players get away with that. But I guess the referees, are judging from a different standard when I was playing. And keep in mind, I went to one game about 2 years ago, Seattle Supersonics against the Golden State Warriors. I walked out. It was really, really boring. It was really boring. I walked out of the game because it was a dunk or 3. A dunk, or it was no game. It's a dunk. Everybody wants to dunk. Basketball is much more than dunking.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family? You said you have 6 children.
Yes. Yusuf, you want to come up? This is one of my sons here. My son was an All-American at SPU. He went to Division II school. This guy should be in the pros right now, but politics has maybe restricted him. I called up the Golden State Warriors and I said, we're interested in your son, but we have 12 no-cut contracts. So he's a victim of not getting in because of the politics of the league, which I don't like, where people get no-cut contracts and nobody else is allowed to get in there or beat them out. And then I have, thank you. I got my daughter, Mariam. She had a baby last year. She had a granddaughter that's 1 year old. Jalen, my grandson, he's 6 years old. And then I have a stepdaughter named Atia. Then I have a son that he teaches English in Kuwait. He's been over there, and he's doing pretty good because it's tax-free. And also I have Sarah. Then I have a little girl, a little Zayd. She looks just like me. She's 5. Her name is Nora. And so I have a big family. I was blessed with a big family and a pretty good family. We've had a few problems, like any family, as far as kids are concerned. But it's going to be okay. Another question? Yes.
I noticed in the back of the book you're doing something in clinical work in Seattle.
Yes. Yeah, what I did, because of what I told you about drugs and alcohol, and remember I told you I'm going to come back to something? Remember I told you that? And I'm going to come back to this. About 6 or 7 years ago, Charles Barkley said, and I'll quote him, I am not a role model. I don't know what he was talking about, because just the fact that you're an NBA ball player, you should be a role model. And I've upped the ante a little bit because I went to a book reading about 2 months ago, or 3 months ago, and I asked some kids to come up, and they got a basketball like this. One kid's holding a basketball here. One kid's holding a basketball there. So I told the kid, I said, if you don't become a basketball player, what are you going to become? And he said, I don't know. That's a problem. So he's putting all his eggs in one basket. He's going to become an NBA basketball player. Of course he might not. You know why? Take 100%. Take 100%. Take 1% out of that 100. Cut it up into 30 pieces, lines, 30 lines. To become an NBA player, 1/30th of a percent. That's who makes it. It might be easier to become an astronaut, but you can't tell the kids that. So Charles Barkley's statement, I am not a role model, I want to tell you, I am a role model. Because these kids, they need help. It's a complicated what's going on. My God, we're in a war right now. Everything's just topsy-turvy. A lot of things are happening. People are confused. And I want to say I am a role model. Question? Yes.
I'm going to say on a personal level, very happy to see you because I was here when you were playing and I attended many of the games and cheered for you and the teammates. And do you get together with the players, reunions with the players?
No, we wanted. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Oh no, I got an email from Bill Kane last week. He said, I love you, Zay. Have a good. Tell everybody hello and aim. So Bill Kane I almost forgot. I'm glad you told me that. Bill Kane said hello to everybody. He lives in France, and it's like anything else. Sometimes we promise things, we're going to see each other, but just life itself pushes us in other directions. Ideally, I would want to keep in touch. When I came back in 2004, we had a guard on our team named John McGonigal. And John, he didn't live up to his aspirations. He broke his leg that season. And we were supposed to keep in touch, but we haven't. Every couple of months, I call up Tom Goodman. And we laugh and joke. And Tom Goodman, so he's probably the closest to me. I call him a lot. And we laugh and we joke and we reminisce, Who else? Oh, that's about it. But just as an answer to your question, life pushes us in different directions, and we would like to do that, but sometimes time and schedules and things it doesn't permit it. A couple more questions.
Was John Potasic on that team you were on here in Iowa State?
Yeah, I think there was a Tom. Yeah, I remember kind of a blonde hair. Blonde.
John Potasic.
Was he blonde?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't remember.
I can't say for sure. He was ended up as a radiologist at the clinic at the hospital here.
No, I don't think I remember him. No, I don't think I remember him. No, I don't think. Questions? Some people ask me, well, when I raise this question, you'll probably say, "Oh, I should have asked that." Who was the toughest player I ever played against? Okay, I think probably it was Kareem, because Kareem was so tall, and he's like this, and he's got this sky hook. What are you going to do? And what I try to do, I try to just maybe make him work harder on the defensive end to get him tired. That's all you can do, and you can get help from the weak side. Kind of put a zone around the basket where you can't get too close to the basket. Excuse me. That's what you can pray to do, And he probably was my toughest player I'd ever had to play against. Of course, Wilt and I tell you, Bill Walt was incredible. But Walt was hurt most of the time, so when I played against him, he was hurt sometimes. He had bad knees, and I saw him in Las Vegas. I went to the All-Star game last week. I didn't go to the game, but I went to the festivities. And I saw Bill Walton, I saw, Moses Malone and Rick Barry and, Calvin Murphy and a lot of the great players that we've all heard about. Any more questions? Yes?
How did you end up becoming Muslim?
How did I end up becoming Muslim? I write about it in my book. One day, I grew up as a Catholic. And one day, I was in Milwaukee. And I was wearing a cross around my neck. We were playing, who were we playing? We were at a practice. I had a cross on. And Kareem came up to me and he said, well, what's that around your neck? So I kind of said, what? And I looked down and I saw the cross. Then I realized that I was wearing an ornament, and I didn't know why I was wearing an ornament. I was wearing it as a fashion or as something that other people did. So I said to myself, right at that split second, I said, I'm going to study. I'm going to try to find out why I'm wearing this. So I went to the Milwaukee Public Library, and I got a Bible, I got a Quran, and I got a Gita, Bhagavad Gita, and I start studying and reading it, and I made a decision to become a Muslim from that experience, just like you did, pretty much like you did. Questions? I love questions, so please ask me. This is my favorite part of. I don't like to speak too much. It's going into. I got 5 more minutes. Yes.
How many teams did you play for in the NBA? I guess the country, so I didn't really get a chance to follow you.
What teams?
Which teams did you play for?
Okay, I was the number 1 pick in the '68 draft. Elvin Hayes with number 1 from the University of Houston. Wes Unseld with number 2. A guy by the name of Tom Hallwinkle with number 3. A guy by the name of Bob Coughlin with number 4. I went number 5 in the draft. And I went to a team. I'm glad you asked that. I went to a team called the Cincinnati Royals. I missed one thing. I said the toughest player I ever played against. But who do you think is the greatest? Who do you think I think the greatest player is? Oscar Robertson. Oscar, to me, was the greatest basketball player that ever lived. And if you ask Jordan, Jordan might tell you the same thing. And I was privileged, and I'll end with this very, very funny story. I got 2 funny stories for you, and then I'll end it. First story, I'm with the Seattle Supersonics. We're playing the Lakers, so we're in Los Angeles. The Lakers I think that was the season they had their 33-game winning streak. They had Wilt, Gail Goodrich, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and the late Happy Harrison. So we're playing against them, and at halftime I got 24 points against Wilt. Now, back in those days, we had a jump ball in every quarter. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Today, we just have at the beginning of the game, and we have an alternative possession the second half. So the second half, I go out to jump against Wilt, and I put out my hand. I go, and he takes my hand and he goes, and he uses profanity. One letter begins with an F, an M, and the other says an F. So, and he pushes my hand away. He says, MF, you scored 24 points on me. I guess he got chewed out. So guess how many points I ended up with? 24. True story. True story. And I'm trying to think the other story. I'm trying to think of another. What was I going to say? The other thing. Oh, Oscar. Why I think Oscar is the greatest of them all? Because Oscar was a human computer. Not too many people know that. I would say, okay, Oscar, how many fouls do I have? He would say, Zay, you got 3. In his head, and all the people on the team, and the opposition. He knew all those guys. And then he knew how much time was on the 24-second clock at all times. The game clock at all times. I don't know if Michael could do that. But Oscar was a human computer. And on April 19th, there's a movie coming out called The Big O. April 19th is about the life of Oscar Robertson. And finally, this is kind of funny too. Doing my book, I was trying to think who would do a forward for me. And I thought of all great players. I thought of people like Jerry West. I said, no, I don't know Jerry that well. Bill Bradley is a friend of mine, who was a very, very caring guy, very good guy, Senator Bill Bradley. I said, no. What about Kareem? Nah, me and Kareem were never that close. I said, Oscar. It's Oscar. So I got his number, and I got on the phone. I called. Is Oscar there? Oh, yeah. Can you tell him about Zayd? I'd like to speak to him, please. I was really nervous. I was afraid he was going to say no, right? I said, Oscar, this is Zayd. Oh, yeah. You remember me, huh? Yeah, I'm Zayd. Don Smith? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, Oscar, I played at Iowa State. Yeah. Oh, you know who I am. Yeah, Oscar, you remember we were in Cincinnati together? Yeah. Yeah, number 35. Yeah. For Iowa State, yeah. Cyclones. Yeah. 6'9". Yeah, 240 pounds. Yeah. Yeah, Big 8. Yeah, I played in the. Yeah, you know who I am. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, Oscar. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oscar. Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn. Brooklyn, New York. Yeah, New York. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Yeah. Yeah. You remember me? I played for Cincinnati Royals. I was the #1 pick back in '68. Yeah. Are you busy? What do I want? Well, Oscar. And then it was almost like 2 years. I was so nervous. I said, Oscar, I just wrote a book. Can you do a forward for me? Guess what he said? He said, Zaid, I would be honored. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Okay, I played 10 years in the NBA, but I really never thought I was that good. I never had a big head about it. But Oscar doing a forward for me, I just can't tell you what that means. And forward by the legendary Oscar Robinson. Just to think Oscar thought I was a good player, that's enough for me. That's enough for me. So, I thank you. Yes?
Did you ever play against Michael Jordan?
No. He's way ahead of me. I'm way ahead of him. Way before him, I should say. I would have liked to. That would have been interesting. I played against Dr. J, though. Julius Erving. So any more questions? Is that it? Okay, we're right on time. It's 8 o'clock, I think it is. And, it's an honor to be here at Iowa State. And, I'll be happy to talk to any of you about anything. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Why do you want a beard?